what scares me really is the fact that history is repeating itself, and it seems like we're not learning anything. We're going through the same process that we do after every catastrophe. There is this empathy, there's this sympathy, there's this emergency that's never sustained. And the fact is that we're not able to step back and accept that this is now the new normal and requires a fundamental change in how we go about doing things. So small countries are very vulnerable because the size of our economies in absolute terms make us vulnerable. These hurricanes, if we look at Dominica, 200% of GDP. What does that mean? It means that after the hurricane, what was the infrastructure to conduct daily business doesn't exist. So it's not only the loss of it, but how much you're going to have to invest to get back to it. So think of it from a time perspective, a time capsule, that you're a family, you're not very wealthy, and that you're living in a country in which literally everything around you is destroyed. So you're faced with the dilemma, do I stay here or do I have to move? And more than likely, a lot of people are going to move. Those that can, do. Once they've moved, do they come back? All right, so that's a resource that a small state has lost, that they've invested in. A person who's gone to school there, who knows people, who is motivated by their country because they're from patriotism, that's lost. How do you replace that? And so leaving the Bahamas, my heart goes out because I'm actually seeing a country where some of its islands, that the people are going to have to be evacuated. And so we had it 2 years ago with Barbuda, but people said, oh, it's only 2,000 people. Right? We had it with Haiti. And people were able to say, well, this was a poor country to begin with, and it was to be expected. Here is a country in the Bahamas which has $50,000 plus per capita GDP, in which 20,000 people for sure are going to have to be evacuated for a period of time until the country can get back up. So all these people would have left. How many of them are really going to come back? And then now you're faced with Grand Bahama with 50,000 people. And from what I'm hearing and understanding is the likelihood that those people are going to also have to be evacuated. Abaco is the second largest tourism port for the Bahamas, so the revenue loss is going to be tremendous. So in leaving, I'm asking myself, is this going to be sufficient? Is this where the tipping point comes, where we're able to convince the world that these small island states are under tremendous stress, and we cannot wait for the storms to happen to determine to go and fix these things up? The message is not to take our resilience for granted. So, just because Dominica is operational and just because Haiti is operational, and more than likely in the next couple of weeks, life will go on in the Bahamas, it doesn't mean that it's going on where it was before and that there's not been an impact. Unfortunately, I've learned over the last 3 years that the bureaucracy and the process of our systems and the new word governance are so strongly embedded in our institutions that it makes it very difficult for them to adapt to this new normal. So everybody's using the term new normal, but you're not seeing the consequent action to go with it. And so we've come up here to say the solution that we have come forward with that takes into consideration the difficulty of these institutions to change, and with the appreciation that we're not in control of our own destiny, is for us to be able to create our own SIDS foundation, which would create a governance structure that would hopefully meet everybody else's standard. Well, it has to meet everybody else's standard. It's an institution that can take on assets, so it means that the debt can be confined to the foundation, and certainly would now allow us to focus on the physical infrastructure, which would go a long ways in reducing the impact. Means that it gets easier to be able to recover. Because unfortunately, there is not 100% resilience that you can build. Saint Lucia getting 36 inches of rain in 48 hours, there's no amount of drains that you can build that's going to cope with that. But you can certainly minimize the impact considerably. You know where the low-lying areas are. You know that, in fact, because we're a volcanic island, that our hillsides are vulnerable. So you now can invest in slope stabilization, particularly around larger community areas. All of those things will go a long ways in reducing the physical impact. And then it's, on a mental basis, is for us to be in a constant state of preparedness. And once we've done that, we've now accepted the new normal, and we can proceed to compete on a global basis. The youth voice is incredibly important because it's not perceived to be self-interest in, if I as a government come out and prescribe something, it will be seen as, well, I'm trying to help Saint Lucia. The voice of the youth is pure. And I'm so encouraged by them in terms of some of the stories you're hearing of what they're doing, and that they recognize that this is their future. And they have recognized more so than we have that this is singularly the most important thing that we have to be able to deal with. And the sad reality, like non-communicative diseases, our control. Diabetes is what? Is lifestyle, how you eat and how you work out. And in many parts of climate change are within our control. It's changing our habits. I mean, because of them, many of us have taken on the initiatives to eliminate plastics, a decision that should have been made years and years ago. But it's all of a sudden their advocacy, their passion, the pureness of their voice, that we're seeing this change. And so it's to say to them, to keep encouraging them to do what they're doing. And it's making a big difference, not only, I think, in their lives, but in the lives of younger people who don't have that opportunity. And if I left Bahamas with one thing, and I promised myself, is that the people who have been affected will not remain voiceless. And I think that the same can be said of the young people, that they're certainly providing a voice to the people who cannot say it for themselves. One of the critical things and what we're very encouraged by is the decision for UNCTAD to include climate change, and particularly for SIDS. And people may not be able to connect the dots on this, but the fact is that if we continue to be infected by climate change issues to the extent that we are, then our ability to compete on a global market and participate in trade is eliminated. We're very proud of the fact in Saint Lucia, 170,000 people, that we have two Nobel laureates, one in literature and one in economics. And certainly Sir Arthur Lewis in economics, it was his economic model that Singapore used, Lee Kuan used in order to develop that success story. So there are many intellectual ideas that come from these small island developing states because the perspective that you can develop, you can see an entire economy in front of you, versus when you're in a big city of millions of people, it's difficult to understand how all the dots connect. And it would be a shame if the world lost that opportunity. And so I really want to thank UNCTAD for taking this initiative and understanding the connection between our own viability, the contribution that we're making on an international basis, and our participation as a trading partner in the world.